All right, let's get started. Again, this is Mark Wayshak. I'm so excited that you're here for the Radical Relevance web training. This is going to be an amazing, amazing use of your time. I'm so excited to be introducing Bill Cates. Just on a personal level, Bill is a friend and mentor of mine. When I first started my business, teaching people how to sell, Bill was one of the absolute people at the top of the game. And so it's so excited to be partnering with him on this program. And also just his content is so rock solid. In fact, a recent article in Tech 21st Century reported the deluge of information in modern times has led to the daily bombarding of the average human brain. And so for this and many reasons, our attempts to engage with new prospects are just, and we know this, but they're met with mental and logistical barriers. So the question is, how do you position your business and how do you communicate your value proposition in a way that cuts through all that noise? How do you craft a client attraction message that grabs someone's attention, shakes them up a little and says, listen to my message, this is important to you, but obviously doesn't say that, right? Because that's super salesy, that's not how we do it. And as the author of Get More Referrals Now and Beyond Referrals, Bill Cates has truly revolutionized the way thousands of professionals acquire ideal clients through referrals and introductions from advocates. And Bill has more recently expanded his focus to include strategies that you can use to discover your full value and then communicate that value in a way that will attract the attention of ideal clients and ultimately move those clients to take action. Bill's newest book, Radical Relevance, which he just released in October, has achieved bestseller status. And so it is my distinct honor to introduce my friend and mentor, Bill Cates.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate that.
Of course.
Yeah, and I admire a lot of work that you've done. So welcome everybody, and we're gonna get right in now. I think that we have a problem, and Mark alluded to this. The problem is that our prospects' brains are overwhelmed. In fact, it's been estimated that the average person in the United States at least gets 3,000 marketing messages every 24 hours. And if you figure you sleep 7 hours, that's about 3 marketing messages a minute. And that's just marketing messages. So, how do we get our message through? How do we stand out in a crowded market from others in the sea of volume of message? Well, the trick is this. We have to hit the bullseye in the brain of our prospect that's immediately relevant to grab their attention and then compelling to drive them to action, right? If we're not relevant, then we'll be ignored quickly, immediately. If we're not compelling, then we'll be ignored pretty quickly after that, right? We can grab their attention. We can be tricky. We can be cute. We can be flashy. We can grab their attention. But if we don't have substance to back it up and to move them forward, then we lose their interest, right? So I believe we live in a pretty radically relevant world. And let me explain this. And this is what set up the expectation of your prospects, my prospects, Mark's prospects, right? We expect people to be relevant, to give us relevant messages. And let me give you some examples. So, Amazon is a relevance machine. I just happened to find this particular book here, having a little fun. But what we know is that when you go searching for a book or any product, they'll say people who bought that were also interested in this or bought this, etc. And if you're on Amazon Prime and the shipping is free, you'll probably buy that too, right? So it's all algorithms are all in the relevance, other things you've searched for, what Amazon knows about you and knows about people who are searching for any particular book or item. When's the last time you went shopping for water, right? Water, still water, fizzy water, with vitamins, without vitamins, flavored, not flavored, smart, dumb water. This is all an effort by water companies to have a relevant product for the various people that come by, because now people are looking for different things. It's all about relevance. This is my favorite example. Billboards on the highway, especially the electronic billboards, are actually programmed or informed by the driving apps, the maps, right? Like Waze and Google Maps. And all the data from those apps tell the billboard companies who's driving by a billboard at any given time of day. And so it changes the messages for the demographics of who's driving by. right? Everything is about relevance. Relevance has been around forever. This is not a new concept. It's just that our world is so more radically relevant. Let me give you a total example here. So a lot of these electronic billboards are now equipped with pollen sensors. And what happens when the pollen count gets to a certain level, the sensor triggers off special ads specifically for the local pharmacy or allergy medicine. So because we live in this radically relevant world, people are expecting us to be relevant. If we show up with a message that just guesses at who they are, then there's a darn good chance we're not going to guess right and we're going to miss them, or they're going to see that we're guessing. So for 25 years, I've been teaching folks how to get more referral business, how to get more referrals, more introductions. And when I first started the business, I was teaching people how to ask, mostly how to ask without looking like an over-aggressive life insurance agent. And I work with life insurance agents, and I tell them that the methods they've been taught, the old style, have been aggressive and polluted the waters for us, and we don't want to look like that. But I found out very quickly that a lot of the folks I was working with actually weren't referable in the first place. So if you're going to expect referrals and introductions, you got to be referable. So we started working on client or customer engagement. And then the do not call regulations come out for B2C businesses and all the various ways it's just so difficult to reach people. We started focusing on introductions. And so my last book before my most recent, Beyond Referrals, takes it to that next step, to the introductions and the appointments. But then here's what happens with referrals. Referrals, introductions, operate or work because of borrowed trust, right? We borrow the trust in one relationship just long enough to earn our own trust in the new relationship. But at some point, we have to start earning our own trust and have a relevant and compelling message. And that's where I wrote my new book, Radical Relevance, because I wanted to make sure that I continued the process for everybody, that you could not just get more referrals and introductions, but you have a way to talk about your value to attract the right people and all that. So if you do decide to get the book, by the way, it's more than just a book, because if you get the book, you can also register the book for what we call the Radical Relevance Toolkit. And the Radical Relevance Toolkit is just like a library filled of information that I didn't want to put in the book because I didn't want to make the book too long. And I had all this other information I wanted to convey to people. And this is all free. It's all part of just getting the book Radical Relevance. So you can see there's a guide on radically relevant LinkedIn and your value proposition generator and website guide and all kinds of other stuff in there. So if you're interested, go get the book, and I'd love to chat with you. But let's dive into some of the contents of the book, shall we? So what's the straightest line to relevance? Well, the straightest line is an introduction from a trusted source. So that's how this new content of mine links up with the other stuff, right? That's how we become radically relevant in the lives of someone else. If we get introduced by someone they trust, then they're more likely to open the email, read the message, listen to the voicemail, whatever it is. So I want to start out with some real tactical stuff for you here, because I know you want tactical stuff. And so I want to talk about some email introductions. This is not in the book. This is really just some value I wanted to bring to you at the top of the program. And so I've identified 3 basic types of email introductions that we should all consider using. I'll tell you my favorite, but you'll see what works best for you. So the first one is really where, and you've probably been introduced this way in the past, take his call, take her call. So let me give you an idea what this looks like, and I'm going to give you different industries displayed here. So in the subject line, all right, George, someone you should meet. George, I've been doing some financial work with Laura Smith. She's really opened my eyes. A few things I need to put in place to protect my family and secure a better retirement. I CC her on this email, so you can expect her to reach out to you sometime soon. I think you should take her call. I'm sure it will be time well invested. So a couple things going on here. If you're the person being introduced and you've been CC'd, they expect you to follow up. That's good. You have someone you can follow up with now. And notice it says, I think you should take her call. When we're helping our clients craft these introductions, and we do want to work with our clients or customers to craft these introductions if we can, we want to get a little bit of that endorsement, that little bit of recommendation, right? So I think you should take her call. We want to take his call, meet with them, whatever is appropriate for you. So that's one type of email introduction. You've probably been introduced like this. This one I call the email handshake, because we're literally creating a handshake within an email. And what's good about this is your referral source can see, the prospect can see the time, the effort, the attention that the referral source has put into making this introduction. So in this case, the client sends an email, CCs you, or better yet, puts you in the regular not even a CC, just in the regular address line, right? So you're equal with that prospect. Bob Jones, meet Jenna Brown. Bob, I want to meet Jenna. Jenna's my favorite mortgage consultant, etc. Jenna, meet Bob Jones. Bob Brown, Jenna Brown, Bob Jones. Okay. Bob and I were roommates in college, so we're actually creating an introduction. You can see this, right? And it also says, I highly recommend you speak with Laura. Now, what some people do is they like to craft kind of a template that you can send to your referral sources, to clients, customers, whoever's going to introduce you, to create this email handshake. So this is my favorite. This is the one that usually works the best for me and for the folks that I work with through coaching and training and whatnot. But there is another one that's worth looking at. And I call this the client bump because I can't think of a better name. But here's what it looks like. Let's say you have a client or a customer, you're not sure they're going to get to sending the email. Maybe you don't trust the commitment to send the email introduction out. Or maybe they say they're going to and you need a fallback position because they're not doing it. Well, you send the email and then you CC your referral source and you get agreement from them to add to the message, right? So it goes something like this. You're going to use the referral source's name in the subject line to actually get the email answered, right? That's what the subject line is for, to get the email answered. So Diane, my name is Bill Case. I just helped Gary and Sally White sell their home. Gary mentioned you work together and we're thinking of putting her on your home market. Based on Gary's urging, I'd like to schedule a brief call, 10 to 15 minutes, to see if it makes sense to continue the conversation. Now, a couple of thoughts on this one. I now have agreement from the referral source. When they see this go out, hopefully they will add to the conversation. We'll talk a little bit about that when we are arranging this introduction. You know, what do you think you'll say when you add to the conversation? And so we coach them a little if we need to. And so now they're doing a little bump to this email. If they never do it, we are still in touch with our prospect, right? We're still in touch with that person. So we're there, we're connected, which is good. And then notice I said I'd like to schedule a brief call, 10, 15 minutes. If you have the kind of business where you want to get in person with a prospect, I don't recommend that you go for an in-person meeting from an email introduction of any kind. You want easy yeses here. So I recommend you arrange a quick call. I say brief call, 10 to 15 minutes. If you don't say brief or don't put the time frame in, they're going to be thinking at least a half hour. I don't want a half hour for the first call. I mean, I'll block it off. I have the time there if we need it. Quite often it goes over the 15 minutes because we're engaged in a good conversation. But I want an easy yes here. So those are three simple emails that you can use to get introduced. And someone just arrived, Mark. Yes, we are recording. I should have said that earlier. And so if we are recording this, if you can't stay for the whole thing or you missed a little bit at the front, because you registered, you will get a link to the recording, and you can feel free to share that with other people as well if you want. So where do we communicate our value, right? Well, how about like everywhere? Everywhere you go, everywhere you speak, if it has anything to do with your business, you're going to be talking about your value. And if you have people that work for you, work with you, if you're a sales manager or company owner, we know that everybody, when the people say, hey, what are you doing? Where do you work? They're talking about your value proposition of your company too. So one of the things you want to do is get everybody in the entire firm, whatever size it is, whether it's 2 people or 10 people or 200 people, on the same page with how to communicate the value. So there's a consistent message out there. So you start to attract the right people to your business. So when you're trying to communicate your value, what are you trying to accomplish? What is the goal of copy on your website? What is the goal of copy on your LinkedIn profile? What is the goal of a brochure that you send out or an email you send to anybody, right? What is the value, or what is the purpose of communicating our value? Well, I want to make sure you're not falling into this trap, which is just trying to impress people. Because most websites I visit and most LinkedIn profiles I read, it's all about them. It's all about people trying to establish credibility. And there's nothing wrong with trying to establish credibility. In fact, you want to, but not from the beginning. That's not what your prospect wants to hear. Your prospect needs to know that you have a sense of who they are first. So to borrow a kind of a metaphor from the movies, if you think of Star Wars, particularly the early Star Wars that came out many, many, many years ago, who was the hero? Well, Luke Skywalker, right? And who was the guide? Well, Yoda the guide was. And then the villain, of course, with Darth Vader. So you want to make sure when you start to communicate your value that you position your prospects, your clients, your customers, they are the heroes. You and your team, you're the guide. So you've got to start out with messaging that pulls the hero in to see if they're even interested in working with the guide. And then you can start to talk about your credibility. And we'll go through this a little bit. I'll show you a few things, a few examples. But like on my LinkedIn profile, I don't talk about myself until about the third or fourth paragraph. It's all about the person visiting the LinkedIn site to see if I'm drawing in the right people, if they are the right person for me. Then I talk a little bit about what I do. Now, what's the villain? Well, in this case, in this webinar, at least the villain is all that noise in the market, right? And the frustration is the kind of the internal part of that villain that we all feel with having it hard to reach people. So what is the villain? You're the guide. Make sure you don't fall into that trap. George Campbell, I love what George has done on his LinkedIn profile. If you go to his LinkedIn profile, look at this. It says, like I got to zoom in there. Yeah. Enough about me. Let's talk about you. That's the very beginning of his LinkedIn profile. And then he starts to talk about if you are a leader, especially of a sales team, et cetera, et cetera. So he's qualifying. He's making sure he's giving a message that's going to pull in the people that he wants to talk to and who might want to hear from him and not worry about the rest. All right. So even in your LinkedIn profile, you don't want to try to set yourself up as a hero at first. All right. So what are we trying to accomplish? Well, we're not trying to be the hero at first. What we're trying to do next, is to attract the right people. When you write your messages, your emails, your LinkedIn, your website, whatever you put out there in the world, Facebook ads, I don't care what it is. Are you, number one, trying to attract the right person and trying to repel the wrong person? Here's one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they try to expand their message to let's not leave these people out or let's not leave these people out, right? Let's build a little bigger tent. But the problem is when you build that bigger tent of messaging, you actually are weakening your messaging. It's not going to be as effective as if you make it narrow. The more narrow, the more precise, the better. Attract the right people, repel the wrong people, and then move them to take action. If you send out emails to prospects, to clients, and they don't get answered, then there's a darn good chance that your message either wasn't relevant enough or compelling enough to move them to answer. Voicemail messages, anything that you do outbound, if people aren't responding, then it's either not relevant or not compelling or both. And so we've got to own that. Now, sure, there's some things going on their side that maybe the timing was right for them, right? We're not responsible for every person who doesn't respond, but in most cases, we've got to own it. It's our messaging. It's not relevant. It's not compelling, right? So make sure whenever you start to write your messaging for an email, for a website, for anything you're doing, marketing, sales wise, number one, is it relevant to that person to attract and is compelling enough to move them to take action? Now, what can you do, especially on a sales standpoint, if you're a salesperson reaching out to prospects to make sure you're relevant? Well, it's all based on context. So you better do some research. You better know who you're reaching out to. And there's two different types of research. There's cold research, which is, looking somebody up on LinkedIn and their website and their profile on website and maybe doing a little research into their industry on Google and all of that good stuff. Right? It's all good stuff. It's all good to learn. Maybe you can even, scope out their Facebook page and see what they show to strangers on Facebook. And then there's warm research. And that's what can only come from someone who knows that person. That's why working from referrals, from introductions is still a key part of everything I teach, because that's the easiest way to be relevant. And you can ask your referral source, what's going on in George's life that's important to him, or, what's going on in Laura's business that's important to her right now? What are some of her biggest opportunities and challenges? So we can then attach a relevant message or send a relevant message. It's so important. Don't be lazy. Do your homework, do your research. Now in the book, the first chapter, we talk about the 17 rules of radical relevance. That could be a webinar in itself, but I'm not going to do all of them. I'll do a few now, and then I'll do some more as we go today. And please don't forget to, use the question box to answer questions if anything comes up, and I'll hang around afterwards for questions too. Somewhere along the line, I'm gonna give you my email address so you can always shoot an email to me as well. So rule number one, by the way, is the straightest line to relevance is an introduction from someone they trust, right? We talked about that. Number two, give your clients a seat at the table. What I mean by that, when you're crafting your messaging for marketing and for sales, make sure that you run it by some of your clients. Some of your clients would love to help you get the right kind of messaging in place. And I was doing this with a client of mine, Michael Schmitz in San Mateo, California. And so I'm just running some of my copy by him, getting him, some feedback on some of the things we're working on. He says, Bill, this is what I think about when I think about you. If I had to put it, like in a sentence, it would be Bill Cates makes asking for referrals as natural as breathing. And I go, wow, that's pretty good. I never would have thought of saying that. Thank you, Michael. Can I use that? I'll put your name by it. You'll get a little notoriety and I'll make a lot of money. And he says, yeah, by all means. Right. So now I use that. This is what you get from clients and customers and even prospects with whom you have a good relationship. When they look at the things you're thinking about putting out to the world, they give you their feedback. They give you the words that they would use, the concepts that they would use. And that can make all the difference in the world in making your copy, making your message, making your emails as relevant as possible. Rule number 13 of Radical Rules of Relevance. Use more personal messaging. Go from we and our to you and your. When you're sending an email to a prospect or any other places you're talking about your value, are you saying I? Are you saying we? Are you saying our? Or are you saying you and your? You want to make sure at the beginning of the message, as much as you can, you're using language that's going to pull them into the message, right? You can bring you and I and our later, maybe even in the same message, but start with empathy for their situation. So whenever I write an email, I always look, it's just a habit now, how many sentences did I start with I? And I realize there's got to be a better way to say that, to bring them into the sentence a little bit more. I may even say, you may already realize, but I'm bringing them in with a you rather than with an I. So make sure that you're using that personal messaging in everything that you do. So in the book, we talk about two types of relevance. One, strategic relevance, and both play on the level of marketing and sales. And the strategic relevance are really some of the big messages, or the big decisions, I should say, that we need to decide, like who fits and who doesn't, right? Who are we trying to pursue and who are we not? What is our target market? Where's our bullseye? What makes us a little bit different in the marketplace that we can use in a way that will attract attention? So let's talk about those, and then we'll get into some tactical relevance as well. So your target market. Now, your business may be geared towards a very specific target market, which is great, in which case everybody is working towards that same market. Now, your business may not be. So, for instance, I've worked with printing companies that might have 12 salespeople, and each salesperson picks a vertical market to work in. So now the printing company actually has 12 different target markets, and everything gets easier when you have that target market. I just finished a long consulting assignment with an accounting firm where the partners had grown up some kind of natural targets, natural verticals within the accounting firm. But what we did is help them formalize that a little bit more and give them messaging and give them internal ways to refer internally within the company to those target markets. And so if you're a salesperson working for a larger company, it doesn't mean you can't find a target market that will allow you to create a reputation for yourself. Sometimes I call this reputation marketing. So what it does is it first of all allows you to identify real prospects, ideal prospects, right? If the whole world is your market, then nobody's your market. So when you target, you can identify the folks you want to reach out to. You actually bring better value to these people, right? Not only is your perceived value stronger, it's from the very beginning, but you actually bring real value because you get to know them in ways that other people, other generalists, if you will, don't get to know those people. And then you can join forces with other centers of influence or strategic alliances who are also targeting that market. And then you can work together to target the market together and give referrals and introductions back to each other. And then, of course, as you would expect, your messaging is going to be more relevant. It's going to be more effective because it's going to display empathy. There's that word again. You've heard me say this a few times. The most important thing in our sense of sales and marketing, this is sales and marketing, we have to display a sense of empathy for their world. They need to know that we have a sense of who they are. If they don't, then they're not going to think we're being relevant to them, and they're probably in most cases going to ignore us. So targeting a market will allow you to do this. Now, Todd McDonald's a financial advisor. This works in all kinds of industries. I do work with a lot of financial advisors, but early in his career, he talked to some of the top guys, the top producers. He said, if you were just starting over now, what would you do? What would you do differently? And they all said, well, I wouldn't try to be all things to all people. I'd have a target market. And so if you go to Todd's website, then does this look like a website of a financial advisor? No. Why? Because he's not trying to sell to clip art people. Here's who his business is. His market is closely held, family-owned, heavy construction firms. That's his market. And so his clients build roads, they build bridges, they build runways, they build commercial buildings. And so he has pictures on his website that shows that he understands their world. He knows their world. Now, one of the things I've suggested for Todd to do, he hasn't done it yet, but hopefully I'm going to kick his butt, so we will, is have some photographs of him at those construction sites standing alongside his clients. So now it brings that concept that you're familiar with called social proof, right? Bringing social proof into the pictures. So this is another financial advisor. These are the two quick examples I could pick up. If you're not a financial advisor, the same principles work for you, all right? So this is Adam, who actually focuses on optometrists. And Adam, as a financial advisor, as Todd has created a national reputation for himself because of his specialty. And so having that specialty, who makes more money in our society? Experts and specialists rather than generalists, right? And Adam said, since I made the decision to go all in and exclusively serve optometrists, he says his only regret is not doing it 5 years ago, right? So very powerful, important thing to do, be targeting. Now, one thing I've done with Aaron is helped his whole team get on the same message, right? So everybody in his whole firm, he's got about 19, 20 people at this point, they're all delivering the same message in all their different ways that they deliver message to friends, family, prospects, clients. And so everyone's on the same page. And what's happened, they're attracting more of the right people, which is what we want. So to target, not target. Well, one of the biggest reasons I think that people don't target is really out of fear, a mistaken assumption. The fear is that I just focus on this group, I just build a reputation in this industry, in this niche, whatever it might look like, then I'm going to miss all this other opportunity. And the truth is you may miss the other opportunity, but you'll be so successful in that target market, you're going to create a reputation for yourself. You'll start getting more and more and more unsolicited referrals and introductions and people calling in because of the reputation you've established in the target market. Look, if you try to appeal to everyone, you run the risk of appealing to no one. And we don't want that to happen. I want to share just a fun thing. I love giving gifts to clients, to prospects. I'm a big believer in saying thank you for referrals, a little something. It's not about the money, and people don't give referrals for the gift. I don't even let them know about it. I let it come as a surprise. And so I just got to tell you this quick story. So a client of mine, Craig Strent, owns Apex Mortgage. I took him to breakfast to consult on this book that I have out now, Radical Relevance. And so he gave me some great insights, some great information, and that I was able to use in the book. And I figured, I want to do more than just take him out for breakfast. So I want to buy him a little gift. So a friend of mine actually works for him, and I called him up. His name is Steve Dorfman. I said, Steve, tell me about, Craig. What's he into? What are his hobbies, interests, sports? Does he follow a sports team? Any of that? And he says, well, Bill, he's into Abraham Lincoln. He just loves Lincoln, everything Lincoln. I'm thinking, great, I'll get a book devoted to Abraham Lincoln. He's read every book on Lincoln. Okay, I won't get a book on Lincoln. But then I said, I'll find something. Thank you. So he hangs up, and then he gets it. I get an email from him almost immediately after the call. He says, I forgot to tell you that he's also into socks. He belongs to the Sock of the Month Club, and he's always wearing and showing off some fun socks. All right. So I go on Amazon, and I find this very nice bust of Abraham Lincoln it's bronze, about $35. And Amazon, in its infinite wisdom of being the relevance machine it is, showed me other products that are associated with Abraham Lincoln that other people have considered. And look what showed up, Abraham Lincoln socks. So I bought those for Craig as well, sent him over with a personal note. He called me up. He says, Bill, now it's my turn to take you out to breakfast or lunch to say thank you. So I got taken out to lunch. I got a thank you lunch for the thank you gift because I made it radically relevant to him. And that's the power of doing this. So let me see if there's any questions. I don't see any questions here at this time. So let's talk about your bullseye. What's the bullseye? Bullseye is your right fit client. Your bullseye is really the person who is just right for you. If you're a business owner, it's perfect for your business. If you're a salesperson, then it's perfect for you and the business you want to bring in to the business. So it's people you are meant to serve and meant to be served by you. Your right fit clients, that they resonate with your value immediately, right? How you talk about the work you do will resonate immediately with a right fit client or customer, because you're going to demonstrate that empathy. They're typically a joy to work with. They appreciate your value for all the reasons you want to be appreciated, right? And I kind of joke around in the book, I call it your business soulmate, right? And who wouldn't want more right fit clients? Now, you may take people outside of right fit, but we want to try to make sure we talk and communicate our value in a way that we attract as many of these people as possible. So, and typically these people are more profitable, as you might imagine. And so, first of all, you got to be clear on who you do serve the best and who you do want to bring into your business and who you do want to attract. So are you clear on who a right fit client is? If you're not, then it may be something you want to work on a little bit. So first of all, you work on the demographics. Every business is going to have different demographics. These are just a few things, right? So it could be age, could be gender, it could be the financials of them individually. If you're a financial advisor, it could be of their business, what's their gross revenue, right? What's their location? There's a lot of different demographics that you want to develop for your own business, but you don't want to stop at the demographics. And unfortunately, a lot of people stop there and miss opportunity. You also want to focus on the psychographics, because your right fit clients have concerns and fears and challenges that are specific to them and the kind of situation they're in. And so you can start to speak to them, to their concerns, to their fears, to their challenges, and then eventually to their opportunities and aspirations, so that you can draw them into your message. Now, in the book Radical Relevance, chapter 3 is called The Neuroscience of Relevance. And so I've done a lot of studying on neuroscience related to the topic. And here's what I learned, that the human brain, meaning the brains of your prospects, every 6 seconds, 6 times a second, the brain's going, where am I? Am I safe? Where am I? Am I safe? Right? It's to preserve the organism, to keep the body alive. And then 3 times every second, the brain is also going, is there an opportunity? Is there something I can take action on? So the brain is built to take action, loves to take action, but only when it feels safe. That's why, generally speaking, when you want to reach out to prospects, you want to start with some of the concerns, fears, challenges you know they may have. You can say, a lot of our clients, a lot of folks I talk to are concerned about this these days, or are facing this sort of challenge. Is that true for you? Don't necessarily assume it, but the odds are it will be. And then when you say that, they go, this person knows me a little bit. This person gets my world a little bit. And then you move on to the opportunities, the aspirations, the goals, et cetera, et cetera. So a little neuroscience in there. So this is what's known as a persona. Edward Entrepreneur doesn't really exist. Edward Entrepreneur is the exemplification of a persona. This is an ideal person for someone in the financial services business. And you can see on the left side, it's mostly the demographic stuff. On the right side, it's the psychographic stuff. And you want to get as targeted and precise as you possibly can. You can have more than one persona. You can have 2, you can have 3. I've seen some folks go up to 5. I recommend stopping at 3. But what you want to do is you want to make sure you have the exact messaging for each persona. This is what I mean by being radically relevant. And I also got to forward the slides in the right direction. So like on my website, just to give you an idea, on my website, anybody who lands there, I'm trying to get them to self-identify who they are and then click on a button that will take them to everything that's totally related and relevant to them, right? It's hard to build a homepage unless you're really, really tightly niched on everybody you work with. If you have more than one persona or a right fit client, then it's hard to build a homepage that's going to really address that properly. So you want them to self-identify and then move into the right page. So in our case, it's individuals, it's salespeople, it's advisors, it's solopreneurs that want to learn about what we do to help them. It could be sales managers, it could be corporate leaders in the middle that want to see what we do for corporations and larger firms. And it could be someone just has a conference, wants me to speak at a conference or a meeting. And so each message that gets conveyed once they click on that link will be relevant to them. So think about that, building your website, or wherever else you talk about your value. If you're this, click here. If you're this, click here. If you're this, click here. So they self-qualify, and then you have the right relevant message. The more precise, the more powerful. The more we expand, the weaker it is. The more narrow we get, the more precise it is. All right, so I don't see any questions coming in. Rule 15, your clients aren't mind readers. Always have a call to action. This is even an email you send to a prospect, anything, a voicemail you leave for someone. Always have a call to action. Never assume they're going to know what to do next. And I like to have calls to action that convey a little bit of a benefit. If you'd like to, learn how to accomplish this in your business, please reply to this email or please return my call. So we're trying to have calls to action, not just, to learn more, click here. No, to learn more to do what? To learn more to benefit how. Right? So always, 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 in every place you communicate, just about should be a call to action. Usually you just want one call to action. Now, you can have more than one, especially a homepage website. It's hard to have just one. But as you get narrower in a website, then you can have just one call to action on an email you send out to a prospect. Generally speaking, it's best to have one call to action. You could have two if you really think you need that, but you don't want to give people too many choices, because then they get confused, and a confused mind will not take action. So just a reminder, if you're liking what you're hearing, if you think it's relevant for you, then please get a copy of my book at Amazon, Radical Relevance. You like the 11th or 12th page, you get access to the toolkit and all the other stuff that we have to bring. So that's my little commercial. Tactical relevance. All right, let's get tactical, shall we? So what makes you different? How do you communicate what makes you different? This is a challenge for people. Well, rule 5 of the Radical Rules of Relevance says only differences that matter. So you got to make sure that when you talk about what makes you a little bit different than some other folks out there, make sure that you're conveying something that matters to that person. Because you're targeting the market, what matters to those people. Because you've done a little research, cold research, warm research, you probably know what matters to them. Right? So you want to make sure you can be flashy. And, I've seen people build websites around hobbies and colors and all. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But ultimately, only the differences that matter, right? So what are your sources of differentiation? These are just a few. There's a lot. And one of the best places is, by the way, to find out what makes you different is actually to talk to your clients and customers. When you think about me, when you think about us, when you think about doing business with us, what stands out about us that makes us different than who you used to use or other people who come courting your business? Talk to your clients or customers. It's amazing what you will learn and the phrases they say so that you can repeat the same phrases. And some generic things, target market can make you look different, right? You bring more value because of that. You may have a very special expertise, credentials in a certain area, or a special education. You may have a special process for uncovering the problems, the gaps for the people that you work with. And if you have that special process, give it a name and trademark it. So only you have that special process. No one else can bring that special process. Or it could be how you stay in touch, how you continue to add value. So example, I told you about Craig Strent with Apex. One of the things that Apex Home Loans does is they really stay in touch and provide an incredible experience for their clients, their mortgage clients. And they stay in touch for years afterwards, dripping value. They have, my friend that I mentioned, Steve Dorfman, is the chief experience officer, right? They do things that mortgage companies don't do. I've had probably 7 or 8 mortgages, maybe more. I can't remember any of them, right? Except for Craig. It's the only one I can remember, right? Because they're staying in touch with me in a way that provides value for me. So that could be what separates you from the pack, is how you stay in touch. So I want to give you a little formula here. This formula, I need to give credit to Karen Kopp, K-O-P-P, who wrote a book called Biz Dev Done Right. And she's an expert in going after large sales, large corporate sales, long sales cycle sales. So if you're in that kind of world, you definitely want to, in addition to me and Mark, you want to check out Karen Kopp. But anyway, here's her formula. So it goes like this, and I'll fill it in a little for you. So anyone can, but only we can. For example, this is a prospecting tool. This is a tactical sales tool right here. This is when you're leaving a voicemail. This is when you're sending an email. This is maybe when you're on a phone with someone for the first time. Could be in front of a group where you're having a chance to talk a little bit about what you do in front of a small group. You can use this as well. So let me give you an idea. Any mortgage broker, can help you finance your new home, but very few become your lender for life, keeping you up to date on the latest mortgage rates and home values in your area. For example, our CEO, client experience officer, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something that a Craig Strength at Apex Home Loans might use to separate him from everybody else. Let me give you another example from the financial advisor world. Many financial professionals can talk to you about various financial tools and products. That's not hard to find, but very few have the depth of knowledge that I do about your company's benefits package. By focusing on your firm, I'm able to anticipate challenges and opportunities others simply can't, resulting in a better course of action. For example, always the for example is very important. And I see a hand has been raised, so I will look to that in a second. I don't never know how to look at the hand raised thing here. Oh, there it is. I'm not seeing it. It's not showing up. So if you have a question, I can't see what something said a hand was raised, but if you can put it in the question box, is the best place to put it because I have that open all the time and I'll see it come through. All right. So where was I? So the for example is very important because it brings all the other stuff to life. And what I liked about this one is, my client told me that he thought I know more about the benefits package than the HR department. That might be a little arrogant to say to a prospect, right? I know more about your benefits package than your HR department. But if we're quoting one of our clients, one of our customers, that's what they said about us, then it softens it up a little bit, right? And so I don't care what your business is. This is a formula that you can use. It can differentiate you, it can differentiate the business, it can differentiate the product, it can differentiate the service, a lot of different ways. Many can, or very few, or anyone can, but very few, or only we can. So I hope you find this helpful. This is tactical relevance, right? When you talk about your differentiator, people only care if it's relevant, meaning useful to them. Only differences that matter. So let's shift to the next part, and really the third and final part of this webinar is about having a more compelling message, moving people to take action, right? Because we don't want to just be relevant and get their attention. We also got to move them along. In fact, I think really we got to be relevant, compelling all the time to the entire, because once we're not relevant, we lose them, right? So let's talk about that, what that looks like. So as a salesperson, as a marketer, as a business owner, what's the biggest objection that you and I face with our prospects? Well, I'll tell you, it's inertia. By inertia, I mean wherever they are, getting them to change where they are, doing nothing, doing something different, making fine-tuning, whatever it is, you know that, right? Sometimes timing is everything in a lot of businesses, right? When I reach out to my prospects, sometimes the time isn't right. And I get that. It's legitimate. And at least it seems legitimate on their part. So we've got to, we got to work with that. And how do we adjust their time frame around this? So when I give my live presentations and sales training and speeches and whatnot, I always show the picture of this gentleman. I say, all right, who is this? And I usually hear Beethoven or Mozart. I say, well, you're not even close. Let me draw a diagram for you. So I draw this formula. And then, of course, somebody yells out Sir Isaac Newton, right? One of the fathers of physics. And Newton's first law of motion, sometimes called the law of inertia, and I will give you the abbreviated version, is this. A body in motion tends to stay in motion. A body at rest tends to remain at rest unless what? Unless acted upon by an outside force. So guess what? We have clients that are stuck, right? They're stuck doing nothing. They're stuck in the head in the sand. They're living with the problem. They don't even know they have a problem that's percolating there, right? Or they're moving in a direction and they just we can't get their attention to pay attention to our message and look at a different way to do things, right? So what does it take to get someone to change, their direction? Well, we got to be that outside force. Now, I'm not talking about being forceful, but we do have to become that person that brings in a different message that attracts their attention, right? We have to put a disturbance in the force, to go back to Yoda. So we have to create a pattern interrupt, and a pattern interrupt is what grabs their attention, right? Squirrel. That's a pattern interrupt for me with HDD. So humor can be a pattern interrupt. Let me give you an example. A long time ago, I used to sell printing, and I used to call, and this is when people actually answered their phone, and I used to call folks, buyers of printing, and I'd say, my guess is, Joyce, that you get a lot of calls from people trying to sell you printing from printers. I'm curious, am I the 1st or the 10th today? And they would always laugh and they go, yeah, as a matter of fact, we do get quite a few, but we don't get 10 a day. You're the 1st today. And I go, well, I appreciate that. And I want to make sure that this is a relevant phone call for you. I'm curious, so what do you tell the others? And then they laugh again. And so having a little humor can definitely do a pattern interrupt. So that's one way to do it. Being counterintuitive can interrupt a pattern of someone's focus and thinking. So for instance, sometimes in my messaging, I talk about how referrals are worthless. And people go, what? The referral coach is saying referrals are worthless? Well, yeah, because if you don't get introduced, if you don't get connected, if someone just says, hey, call George, use my name, George doesn't answer his phone anymore, and George is wondering why their friend gave his name out, right? So we got to think in terms of introduction. So how can you be counterintuitive with your messaging? A startling statistic, right, can also create a pattern interrupt. If they may be falling prey to a certain problem that people are facing, they want to, the brain that wants to stay alive and is looking for problems is going, ooh, I wonder if I'm making that mistake, right? 29% of business owners are making this mistake, or 80%, and then you've got their attention. They want to know, right? And then asking questions, asking good, solid, thought-provoking questions can also create a pattern interrupt, right? Be careful. Don't ask the obvious platitude questions. If someone sends me an email one more time that says, Bill, what keeps you up at night? I'm just going to I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not a violent person, but right? No, don't ask the platitude questions. Ask questions that display the fact that you know a little something about their business, or at least their industry, right? Ask good questions. All right. And then research. Obviously, research allows you to do this. I'm noticing that a thing is going up. It says we got some chat. Let me look. Hold on. I could be better at this. I know this. But there's a chat. All right. Creating synergies between two companies. How would you use tactical relevance? Creating synergies between, I'm not sure I understand the question. So here's what I'd ask you to do. So we can keep going and get this material covered. Send me an email, bill@referralcoach.com, bill@referralcoach.com, and give me a little more meat on the bones, give me a little more context of what you're trying to talk about here, and I will do my ever-level best to answer that for you. All right? Thank you. All right, so let's keep going. So this is really a powerful thing for you guys to understand and learn this. What's at the heart of every decision that every prospect makes, that every client or customer, every human being makes? Well, Antonio Damasio discovered this with this tool called magnetic resonance tomography. Say that 3 times fast. And so he studied subjects who the part of the brain that felt emotion was damaged and they could not feel emotion. And so what he discovered definitively is that people who cannot feel emotion cannot make decisions. They can't even decide if they're going to have oat flakes or wheat flakes for breakfast. They either live by checklists or by habit. And otherwise they can't deviate because they don't know how to make a decision because they can't feel emotion. So when we know that the heart of every single decision is emotional, we've got to make sure we strike emotional responses to the things that we say about the work that we do. So for instance, if you're on a B2B situation, and you're selling to a B2B, and there's a problem that the company is facing, right? And there may be some angst that the company is perceiving because of that, but there's also a problem, a challenge that individual that you're contacting is also facing that may or may not even relate to that challenge, and then there's an emotional response to the problem. So when you're good at finding out what your prospect's problems and challenges might be, if it's not connected to something that's a little bit emotional, even just a little bit, then they're not going to act on it, right? Even statistics, by the way, all the logical stuff that we can bring to our messaging, can still triggers an emotional response. So let me give you a few ideas and then we'll wrap this thing up. Clarity, right? What we know is a confused mind will not buy. A confused mind will not take action. Donald Miller in his book, Story Brand Marketing says, if you confuse, you lose. And so the brain, here's how the brain works. As you know, the brain is trying to keep the organism alive. It's trying to expend the minimum of calories or energy. So if you convey a message that's even at least a bit confusing, you could lose them very quickly because the brain doesn't want to go there. The brain doesn't want to try to figure it out. Now, some people will go through the confusion you create because they're really interested, but you lose so many other people if you're not clear. And if you're not clear, I mean, what happens is most of the times they just go away. They won't tell you they're confused. Now, I was a little confused about a question that was asked of me, and I want to answer the question. So that's why I make sure that person reaches out to me with an email. So clarity is one great way. Be careful about being overly clever about how you talk about your business and how you title processes and products and things like that. Because if the brain has to work too hard, it's not going to go anywhere, right? So it's better to speak in terms that are already in the brain, that they already can resonate with, and they'll get it. They'll get it quickly, instantly. I kind of use it as like the billboard effect. So if you're driving down the road and there's a billboard that has a message and it's kind of cute or complicated or something, you know, and 30 seconds later you figure it out, you finally understand what they were trying to say. They didn't do their job, did they? Because you passed the exit. So you want something to resonate as instantly, as quickly as possible. Another way to create action, of course, is a sense of urgency. If people don't see the problem that you solve as critical and important, and therefore urgent, they may not invest the time or resources to solve the problem. If the problem is aspirational, something that would be nice to do when they get around to it, fine. They're not going to do it until they get around to it, right? So you've got to make sure that you're creating that sense of urgency. And one way to do that, a simple question, is just say, what's at risk if we do nothing, right? What will happen if we do nothing? And if the answer is, well, I can live with where we are now, then you have not created, uncovered the problem or articulated the problem and explored the problem deep enough to create this sense of urgency. That's another way. And there's another one that can move people to action, which is a sense of loss aversion, which goes back to how the brain functions in terms of fear, problems, keeping the organism alive versus opportunity. So the easiest way to explain this is just thinking about the stock market, which is had a couple of bad days, the last couple of days. But here it is in related to the stock market, and this relates to your business, whatever your business is. The emotional response to losing $100 in the stock market is twice that as to making $100 in the stock market. The emotional response to losing $1,000 in the stock market is twice that as making $1,000 in the stock market. You just think about your own investments if you're invested in the market at all, how you feel when it goes down versus how you feel when it goes up. And for most people, the average person, that sense of loss is a stronger emotion. So that's why fear of missing out, right? FOMO, that's why it's such a powerful tool, because it ties into this concept of loss aversion, right? So I hope you found some value in our time together. I do have a couple minutes here. Just looking to see if any questions are coming through. So I don't know if you see my mouse moving around the screen. There is my email address, billcates@referralcoach.com. If a question comes up 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 months from now, just shoot it over. Tell me you're on the webinar we did for Mark Wayshak, and I'll remember roughly who you are. And I'll do my best to answer your question. If you're interested in the book, you can go to Amazon, of course, and get it. Or you want to learn a little more, there's a little more explanation on radicalrelevancebook.com. So I'm just looking. I'm not seeing any questions. So again, since you were registered, you will get a recording of this. If you want to share that with others, that's fine. And I am here to help you in any way I possibly can. Let me just leave you with a thought. Knowledge is actually worthless unless you what? Take action, right? Unless you really take action. Oh, Sherry, you have a question. Yes, please type it in. I'll wait for the question to come in. So we got to make sure that we're people of action. Otherwise, the knowledge is worthless. All right, Sherry, I'm waiting for you to answer your question. Unless it's there and I'm not seeing it. All right, we got some others. I got some others. Sorry. Great stuff. Thanks. Nice job. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Link to your book, please. RadicalRelevanceBook.com. RadicalRelevanceBook.com. And I'm just waiting for Sherry's question to come in. Let me see how I do this. I'm not seeing it. Let me dismiss that. Oh, there it is. Tell me how to send a great email for car sales. Well, it depends on who you're sending it to, right? It's hard for me to answer this question, Sherry, because I don't know who you're sending it to. If you're sending it to a prospect, what do you know about that prospect, right? So you can send me an email. We can chat about this afterwards. I don't want to hold people up on this, but I got to know who you're sending it to and what you're trying to accomplish with that email. Somebody said, Sinika, am I pronouncing it Sinika? Martin, thank you. I already have your book and I'm learning a ton. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I guess, Sherry, just send me an email. Well, let's go back and forth that way. If we have to hop on the phone, we'll do that. I'm happy to help you. You're a friend of Mark Wayshak. You're a friend of mine. It just really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. It's hard for me to do that in a vacuum like this. I got to know how you know them, what do you know about them, et cetera, et cetera. So be relevant, be ignored, be compelling, or be forgotten. All right, guys. So if I didn't hit your question, if I asked you to send me an email, please send me an email. I'll get back to you as quick as I can. Bill Cates not Bill Gates. We wish it was Bill Gates, don't we? Bill Cates at referralcoach.com. And we'll get this recording processing out to you. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.